Let's talk about shrink wrapped sleeve can labels and how to get them off. I've got a whole bunch of examples of some shrink wrap sleeve labels. You can tell them by the plastic edge that's all the way around the can. And there's definitely a difference in the way that you want to be taking these labels off of these cans. They're not flat, so you've got this edge to contend with here. And getting a good cut of a straight line across here is a little challenging. I don't have a perfect approach for it, but it's pretty good. It's pretty cheap, but the end result is a nice flat label that you can do whatever you want with. I've been trying this out with a whole bunch of different ones. And I would like to show you what I came up with. So without further ado, let's take some shrink wrap labels off of some cans. Obviously, you are going to need a good sharp knife. This is an X-Acto. I guess you could use a plain old razor blade. I don't feel like a utility knife would be... I don't feel like a utility knife would be sharp enough. For the 12-ounce cans, a little 6-inch ruler is just fine. If you're trimming bigger labels, you want something a little bit longer. I will always prefer a cork-backed ruler so that they don't slip around. I like to have a cutting mat underneath my work surface. This is like one of those self-healing cutting mats, and this is a good small size for this sort of thing. Now this part's a little weird. I like to have a miter box, and you can see here that I've attached a clamp to this one. And the idea here is that you have a space that can hold the can and turn it in a reasonably frictionless manner and keeping it still. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn the can while we're holding the blade stationary and cut it like that. You can see that you can kind of see the line on here where I've already done that on this can. Do you need a miter box? Absolutely not. Is there some other way that you could hold this can steady while you turn it? Probably. You could put it in a utensil drawer. You could probably set up something where, I don't know, maybe even a couple of rulers. I feel like the turning is important and the keeping it in place is important, because what we're going to do is we're going to hold that knife against it, and we're going to try and keep that knife as stationary as possible while we turn it. So the miter box came to my mind as a good solution. If you don't have one, I don't think you need to buy one, but I'm going to show you how I do it. We're going to start with this Revolution Brewing VSOD can, and I've determined that this is definitely plastic sleeve label. Now, one other thing about using the miter box, on my surface here, it's sliding around a lot. I don't know if you have a workbench or something where you can actually clamp it down to the table. It's probably not it'll only help keep things more stable. I'm going to drop it onto here because it gives it a little bit of extra friction. So we're going to lay the can on the miter box. The clamp is going to keep it in place. The idea here is we're going to hold the blade against the label as stationary as possible, and we're going to turn it. What you want to look for here is where the curve of the can starts. Because in the end, what we're going to want is a nice flat label. So we want to cut off the part that curves. I'm going to keep this as stationary as possible and turn the can while I'm holding the blade against it. You don't need a lot of pressure because this plastic is very thin. You also don't want to dent the can because then you'll have an irregular surface. So I am going to just hold that blade against it. Keep it as stationary as possible. And keep rotating the can until we meet up with the other end of our cut. This can's got a thick seam, so it's giving me a little trouble. But I think that's it. Didn't get it exactly to meet up, but so now what we want to do is we want to get this ring off. It's easiest to just cut it. And gently peel it away from the cut. And there you go. Now we got to do the other side. Same thing, looking for the curve. The miter box really just kind of serves to be an extra hand that keeps the can in place. This bottom one should come up real easily. And it's not perfect, but it's definitely better than if you had just tried to freehand it. So from here, what we want to do is we want to decide where we want to cut it along the spine. And for that, you want to look for the actual seam so that, because chances are the image that you're trying to maintain is not going to end up on that seam. This is really where your little cork-backed ruler is going to be helpful. Again, I'm putting it in the miter box again just to have an extra hand and to keep it stable. And I'll just make my cut right here. Can't see it. Oh, there it is. Oh no! Well, this one needed some help. But because we did that by the seam, the fact that it wasn't super clean doesn't matter because we're probably going to trim this anyway. But there's your nice flat label. You know you did it right if it lays flat. But even if you still have some of that curve in there, you can trim that off. It's going to lay flatter than it would otherwise. And now you can trim your label for whatever purposes you plan on using it for, whether you're going to put it in a scrapbook or mount it somewhere. If you just want the image area, you can do that. If you want to trim off some of this thicker seam material, you can do that. And because this is transparent, being able to line it up on this little cutting board actually works out really nicely. So I cut that seam off. And that's about all there is to it. Let's do one more.